Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. Hello, David Gouthro here, back with an episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. And today I have my guest. I'm privileged to have my guest, Joel Hilchey. Welcome, Joel.
Hi, great to be here, David.
Now, Joel, I know that one of the things you're really focusing on is the importance of people having valuable careers, important careers, things that fulfilling careers.
Yeah.
So I guess there's both a why would someone want one, and then how can we actually create cultures or environments to actually allow them to experience that? So just before we get into that, maybe a little bit of context. Can you just let our listeners know a little bit about what you do and the lens that you're coming at this from?
Sure. So I studied engineering because as a kid, I was good at math. And so everyone said, oh, that's what you're going to do. You're going to be an engineer. I like Lego, And I studied engineering physics and was lucky to get a job pretty quickly. And it was a good job doing database computery stuff. And I realized really quickly I was surrounded by people living for the evenings and weekends.
Wow.
Or at least maybe I was projecting. I was living for the evenings and weekends at that point. It was probably a great job for a lot of people, but it didn't feel like my skill set.
Mm-hmm.
I was a performer through school. I was a juggler and a barbershop quartet singer. And I loved teaching also. And so I was a tutor and teaching assistant. And it was this long commute, 2 hours in the rain on 3 buses one morning. And I just had this moment, was like, I don't want to be here. There was a bit of an inciting force and that I had to change housing locations. But sometimes people are in that spot where you have to double down on, the direction you're going, or there's a convenient excuse to change. And I took the convenient excuse to change and said, I'm going to get into the training and development world. And I did. And that was 19 years ago. So I still went on and did some more schooling, did a master's in environmental engineering, but along the way, built a training company. We're relatively small. We've got 5 full-time staff and 10 or 12 part-time and contract people. But through that process, I moved from being sort of a solopreneur into like a small team leader, like a CEO, I guess now. And we were able to create this really amazing culture. And that has been one of the most rewarding parts of the journey. But all the way along, I think because my own career path did not end up like I expected it would, I've just been really interested in kind of exploring the question, like, how do people thrive in careers? How do people find what they're going to do in their life? And this is especially on the minds of young people, young professionals, but not exclusively. Almost everybody I've talked to, if you ask them, how'd you get to be doing what you do now? Certainly the majority have some form of the answer, I sort of stumbled into it.
Yeah.
And I just think that journey is fascinating for people and how their skills come together. And so the training company we have does career skills workshops, mostly for young people, young professionals, students. We work with educators as well. But in the corporate world and the world of associations, I've been able to share lots of ideas and thoughts on how we can create more fulfilling cultures and better cultures that attract and retain people. And I think fun is often a missing element. So there's the sort of spoiler.
So Joel, these days, things are pretty tough in our economy, and certainly it's being influenced by what's happening in other places, not
totally
south of the border. But if I were, is it reasonable for people to expect that they could or should have a fulfilling career? And the reason I ask that, I hear a lot of people saying, especially young people, you should be lucky that you have a job. Just shut up and get on with it. So there's kind of that going on at the same time. So is it reasonable for someone to expect that they can have a fulfilling career? And then how do we go about helping them have one of those?
That's a great question. So I think, yes, we should want people to have fulfilling careers. I think everybody has an interest in this because I think people thrive when they're doing stuff that they actually care about. And I think the world needs people who sort of give a hoot about what they're doing, in every profession. So I'm not just talking about people who want to work for a mission, or have some vision. They've got a mission to change the world, and therefore that's fulfilling. To be honest, I think some people work for the mission, but some people work for the money, and that is fulfilling for them. They say, "Oh yeah, if this job gives me what I want to do in life, gives me the stability, maybe, or the flexibility, or the money, the wherewithal, whatever the resources, the opportunity to do what I want in life, then that's awesome." So I've talked with tradespeople who love working with their hands. They say, every day I get to see the results of my work, the results of my labor. This thing wasn't here before, and now it is. And I find that really powerful. It's like, oh, that's awesome. So I would love to see everybody be able to find the thing that they like. Like, what is it about their job? What I don't think they should do is just get any job because, like, it's fine. It was the only thing I could think of. I didn't have any ambition to do something different, or better than this. It kind of sucks. So, your original question, is it reasonable for people to expect a fulfilling career? I think I don't know, but it's worth striving for. The other thing is, I think people are more interested in whatever they're doing when it's the relationship is fulfillment and interest is really intertwined. Um,
So I'll excuse where my mind goes in all kinds of different directions because
yeah, I love it. Mine
things
too.
that triggered a bunch of different thoughts. And one of them is around enjoyment. So is enjoyment part of having something that's fulfilling? And just because you enjoy your job isn't necessarily fulfilling. Like, is there an interconnection between those?
Yeah, good question. I think of it as the intersection of fun and meaningful.
Hmm.
And the fun part, we can do lots of fun things that are just enjoyable or pleasurable. But if it's not meaningful, then over time it starts to feel sort of frivolous or empty. Like I love going to on like a vacation to the beach or whatever, and I sit on the beach under a tree. I don't love the sun that much. I'm kind of lame that way, but I'll go and sit on the beach for an afternoon. But on the second afternoon of sitting on the beach, I start to get like a little antsy. Like, I think I want to do something different, and some people that I know can sit on the beach for a week, and some people can sit on the beach for a month. But I don't actually know anybody who just wants to sit on the beach for years. And it's like, it's enjoyable for a time, but most people I know want to combine something that's meaningful or something for them, unless they're sitting on the beach, say, with their friends or their family, or they're sitting on the beach because they feel like this is the place that they are meant to be in life, and for them it is meaningful.
Right.
So I think the meaningful part gets added into the fun part. Yeah, and if you can find the overlap, that's what's powerful. That's
And
what's
I wonder
fulfilling.
if there's another element that's a little bit different, but to me seems important, which is something that's relevant. So you could be doing something
Hmm.
meaningful for you and enjoyable, but if it's not relevant to someone else, you may not get paid for it. So,
Yeah.
but not how to have such an exclusive focus on the relevance that you miss those other parts.
Yes, I agree. We might have chatted before. Was it there was the Japanese have a concept? Is it the ikigai? I
Yeah.
should. And it's got 4 overlapping things. Yeah, I mean, do you remember those? I don't remember all 4 of them,
I
but
don't remember all four of them, but I know that it exists. It's about trying
yes,
to find things that meet as many of those four at the same time.
yes, and
Yeah.
I feel like the fun and meaningful is a simplification of that, and the relevancy, like,
Hmm.
it's something like maybe the world needs, and maybe the other one might have been like something you get paid to do, maybe something like this. I agree that the relevancy, um, at the very least, in my mental framework, I'd add that into what's meaningful.
Right.
Because, I could think it's very meaningful to, I don't know, collect Pokemon cards like my kids or something. I don't find that particularly meaningful, admittedly, right now. But,
It's
but if
one last thing we have in common,
oh
unfortunately.
yeah, okay, yeah, that's but if it's if I can see the relevance of doing that to somebody else, then it would get more meaningful. I'm more interested in Pokemon cards because they're relevant to my kids. And
Okay.
so I've like learned something about them because it makes it more meaningful. So relevancy is like a factor in it being meaningful, but I probably have my own interests in there as well, my own,
Sure,
meaningful
sure. I mean, hopefully,
trade-offs.
ultimately, any decision we make is at some level, even if it's unconscious, in our best interests, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
So, one of the things I was thinking about, find something fulfilling. I was talking to a young woman last year on the podcast, and she'd been one of something like 2,000. I could be exaggerating by a bit, but I don't think I am. 2,000 marketing people that have been tossed out in the street by TELUS. And so, how do you? So here she is. She's competing with 2,000 other people in the same organization looking for jobs, as well as other people in different organizations looking for
Yes.
those jobs. So, how do you combine that task of finding work where you're going to get paid for, and cover your rent or mortgage and things
Yes.
like that, and at the same time doing something meaningful in an unbelievably competitive environment? What
Yes.
thoughts do you offer to folks like that?
Oh gosh. Okay. So the first thing is that if you have survival money,
Hmm.
that gives you options. When maybe it's a hierarchy of needs thing. You
Hmm.
know, if if things are incredibly unstable or uncertain in your life, maybe the first meaningful and fulfilling thing to do is to get that stability and sort of resiliency in your life. So if that means taking a job that is not your first choice, but that is nevertheless the sort of like foundation that gets you the next opportunity, then that I think could be the meaning and the sort of I think it's fun to do that. I feel, I started, saving whatever. It's like it's fun to save a little bit, even if you're not where you want to be ultimately. You're like, hey, I'm on the road. So the first thing is how can you kind of stay in the game? How can you survive? And that gives you options. Second thing, for say one of these marketing folks that are out there, is to say although you're one of 2000, you're unlikely to be identical to the other 1999.
Hmm.
And so I'd start by saying, well, what makes you sort of different than that or interesting? Where are your unique strengths and what do you just like to do? Have you heard of the concept of skill stacking or talent stacking? Uh, I really like this concept. I don't know if it was
But
if it
so you
was
might want
Scott
to just
Adams, was it
might want to
the
just
Dilbert guy?
explain that briefly because our listeners may
Yeah,
not be as familiar with skill stacking.
yeah. So the idea of skill stacking is that you take each of your unique skills and kind of find the overlap of those things. Scott Adams, who
Mhm.
wrote Dilbert, is the guy that I heard this concept from first, and he said like he was not the best drawer. The Dilbert cartoons are super successful. He's the first to say I'm kind of a lousy cartoonist. And he said, and I certainly wasn't the best writer. And I certainly wasn't the guy who knew the most about, engineering and office culture. But he was able to be pretty good at each of those things. And when he combined those things, when he stacked those unique skills, then you end up with like an amazing cartoonist, who just has this quick-witted insight to like, oh, the hilarity of office politics. Um, so each person probably has a unique skill stack that they
Mhm.
might not even recognize at any given time. That is, I don't know. Does that resonate? Does that
Yeah,
explain
yeah,
that a little bit?
it does. And something else that occurs to me is quite often I think I'm projecting a lot of this here, Joel, but
Yeah.
sometimes we don't realize something that we have as a skill because it's so innate to us.
Yes.
It's just who I am, and sometimes it needs an outside person's perspective to say, well,
Yes.
just a second here, what about this and this? Is oh yeah, but that's just who I am. Hang on a second. If you're talking about stacking
Right.
these skills, it's really important to acknowledge those.
Yes. I go one step further and say most of our talents, not just, sometimes we don't realize it. It feels to me like most of the time, the stuff that we're really good at feels we're blind to it.
Hmm.
It's often in a blind spot, and frequently we judge other people for not being good at it. We go, oh my gosh, how could that fool over there not see it this way? And we don't realize that's our superpower. My wife is super empathic. She's amazing with emotions. And I'm not always amazing at emotions. I'm okay. I'm on an emotional improvement program, uh, and she'll sometimes say like, "Oh, how do you not see this?" Say, "No, no, dear, remember, this is your area of brilliance. Like, I'm not a fool, but I'm not at your level." And I think often the most brilliant people, they look around and see, well, gosh, how do other people not see it this way? And that's actually a cue when if you find yourself saying that, gosh, why is nobody else thinking like this? Say like, oh, maybe it's because I have a unique perspective in this way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to check that because occasionally nobody else sees it this way, and we're the fool in the room.
A legend in your own mind, sort of. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But I think that this is a really good approach to say, okay, what do I like to do?
Mhm.
What are my unique skill sets? And don't just look at your professional skill sets. Maybe you're super organized. Your friends always look to you to organize the dinner party or whatever it is that okay, that's organizational leadership right there that you've got, but you may have never actually done that at work, or it hasn't shown up at work. For me, like I mentioned at the beginning, my favorite thing to do in university was going to these coffee house talent show open mic night things and making people laugh, bringing my little juggling show along, or singing, and so it's like, oh, I gained this like audience performance skill alongside my math or problem solving skills. um,
Mhm.
and then there were some teaching skills in there, and I realized, oh, I can combine those things, and then we can keep building that stack over time.
Very cool. No,
Yeah.
I love that concept. And I'm going to keep pursuing my curiosity here, Joel, because in terms of fulfillment, what was running through my mind is, how do you balance um, striving versus settling?
Yeah.
So, so when is it good enough? And in order to be fulfilled, can I be fulfilled if I'm just settling for what I've got? I suspect if I actually tell myself I'm settling, probably not. But if the behaviors that I seem to be settling and not striving anymore, does that impact my sense of fulfillment? I'm just curious.
That's a great question. I think a lot of it comes down to knowing your values.
Mhm.
And because if you know your values, then you can strive to kind of pursue or advance those values. And and that is fulfilling to do that.
Mhm.
Um, and you don't have to feel like you're settling, but you can also recognize how you're already kind of living those values, or the progress you've made towards those things, and feel good about that part of the journey so far.
So you work with, I think, with some of our audience is similar, some are quite different in terms of where we do our work, and my observation, I hope it's not cynical, I hope it's objective, that so many people, when they're doing work around values and organization, they actually haven't considered their personal values until that conversation comes up. Like it's
You're right.
typically not something they get trained to do, and it's important to do, and maybe some have it as as a part of a family conversation. I
Yes.
don't think it's automatic or natural. So how do you get people to think about that in time that they can use that as a base to
Yeah.
compare everything else they're doing to?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right on the money there. I think we can have more intentional conversations. This is some of the training that I do with leaders. Is how do you identify your values and talk about those, and bring those to kind of link them with, say, the company values. But when you perceive that you're working towards something that matters to you, then it's meaningful to do that. Oh yeah, you could say, oh, I'm looking to build stability for my family. Absolutely, that's why I put away $100 every month to
Mhm.
add to the family stability. That's meaningful to do that. um, and we might build stability in a number of ways. if I say, well, why are you saving? Well, I don't know. Somebody said I should. The behavior could be the same, but it wouldn't be meaningful for people. So I think that the key uh, uh, is people have values. They're just not explicit most of the time. And the question is like, hold up a mirror and say, like, what are you actually pursuing right now, and why is that important to you? There's a bunch of neat activities you can do to get at those things, but mostly it involves asking why. Why is that important to you?
Yeah, and my sense is that we always operate out of our values, whether they're conscious or not.
Yes.
And I find it an interesting question. It's kind of challenging. You have a lot of have to have a lot of psychological safety in organizations to ask this question. But
Yes.
if I was in a group with you, might say, Joel, based on how I perceive your behavior through my own lens, this is what your values appear to be. So,
Mm,
because I think it's not about what you say, it's how you behave. The people will interpret what your values are. And I've even seen some exercises where they say, well, go back and look at your calendar and just look
yes.
at all the activity. What values were being displayed based on how you spend your time?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's a great way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, how do you spend your money? What do you spend money on?
Mm,
What seems worth it to you? Um, uh, Another way to look at it might be to say, like, what do you crave? Like, what do you think about a lot?
mm,
And what do you want more of in your life? Although the caveat there is that often the things that we think about, um, you say, oh, I really want to start playing squash again. I love playing squash, and I don't do it very often. Is it that I value squash? It's probably not quite that. Squash, for any American friend listeners who haven't been familiar, it's kind of like racquetball.
yeah,
You go and hit a
pickleball.
yeah, you hit a ball against a wall, you whack it, you like that. And but why do I value it? Well, what I actually like, I usually play squash with a friend. I
Mm,
value social connection.
yeah.
I value my health. I find it hard to motivate myself to run after nothing. But
Mhm.
if I'm chasing a little ball, trying to whack it, then I do pretty well at running, and I'll work up a good sweat doing that. And I value my health, and so that feels good. Um, I value calm. My
Mhm.
brain goes a mile a minute, but when I'm trying to whack the little black ball, I'm only thinking about trying to
Right.
whack the little black ball, and that's a really good feeling. So sometimes the things that we want it's not the thing itself, it's like what that thing represents, or the deeper things that it gets us, the real wins underneath that, you could think of it.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I walk my dog every morning in Lighthouse Park before I go to work. And
Yeah.
is it because I value nature? Is it because I just like time to reflect and think and not be distracted by anything? But if I couldn't
Yes.
walk my dog in the park, would there be something else I could do that could fulfill that? So I think it's a,
Yes.
a really good question. So I'm going to take a leap here, and so let's assume that there's some agreement that it would be valuable to have a fulfilling career, a fulfilling life for that matter. So
Love
when
it.
you're working with organizations, do you talk about how you create a culture that allows other people or encourages other people to feel fulfilled?
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
talk about
So
that.
let's talk about that. So I have just written a book called The 6.5 Habits of Highly Defective Bosses.
Love the title. I don't even care what the content is.
Oh yeah. It's so doing some research here. So I talk about culture and work on culture. And it turns out there are these really high leverage points that leaders in an organization can utilize, but really anybody in the organization can utilize. Things like meetings or recognition,
Mhm,
onboarding, these types of things.
mhm,
And uh, and the way people approach those high leverage points really change the culture for better or for worse. And I had this idea a bunch of years ago as people, started talking about bad boss stories. I had this thing
mhm.
happen. I just thought, oh, that would be funny to try to consolidate these things. Um, and as I shared the name of the book, with more people, it was sort of like a joiner story, like an adding on story. People, oh, I had a bad boss at one point, and so their stories became this lens and a bit of a testing ground to say, did I get the right habits? Have I captured the right things that bother people? Here's the thing. Everybody thinks of the supremely terrible, bully of a boss. That's actually the minority of bosses.
Hmm.
Most people are turned off of their culture, their organization's culture, or their boss in particular, by like far smaller transgressions. They'll say things like, my boss didn't ever really care about my career progression. Habit one is function forgetting. Bosses don't realize, they're a person who's like responsible for helping this person get to where they want to go or whatever. Or they'll say, oh gosh, my boss, he was so policy focused. He would never acknowledge the hassles that he was creating for us. We're working with these shoddy old computers and we're wasting hours of time every day, and we couldn't get new computers. He said, oh no, there'll be budget for that next year. Oh, God, it was, pull my hair out to handle this stuff. They want people who sort of like go to bat for them. But to the boss's defense, most people are accidental bosses. The subtitle of the book is Serious Lessons for Accidental Managers. And 80% of people identify as accidental bosses. They weren't gunning for it. They didn't go to school for it. They were just the senior person around the room when their boss left. And they said, well, you seem to know what you're doing, or you've got a good relationship with the interns. Why don't you lead this project or people? And the reason I'm going to connect the dots on the fulfillment thing here is that when it comes to life satisfaction, job satisfaction makes up about 25% of it. It's quite a large factor.
I'm surprised it's that small, actually.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I mean, maybe it's changing all the time. I don't know. I could check my stats on that. I'll do that after we chat. Let's go with 25% for now. What I know is that it's a big proportion. If you look at all the different things, it's a large proportion.
Yeah.
If you say what contributes to people's job satisfaction, relationships with people are by far the biggest thing. Relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, relationships with management are about 6 times more important than relationships with colleagues.
Wow.
So relationships with management are the single biggest factor in somebody's job satisfaction. And that makes up a pretty big portion of life satisfaction as well. So bad bosses have a really bad effect, not just on, workplace culture and productivity and results, but on people's lives. It's often said people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses.
Yeah.
And that seems to ring true for a lot of people. So, yes. Okay. So where did we start with this? Let's assume people want a fulfilling culture at work or fulfilling jobs. A lot of people, they want a lot of things from their job. They want growth. They want to use their skill set. They want learning, development. They want good relationships with their culture. A lot of people want meaning. The employee relationships, good colleagues. They want flexibility a lot of the time now. Maybe they want boundaries. In our culture, more and more remote or hybrid teams coming up. And this creates a pretty challenging environment for leaders because people want all these things. But of course, companies still need to be profitable and productive and try to minimize risk. And so managers really have a tough job to, support the people on the team and try to create an environment and culture that works for them. While also still getting results. The good news is that those things are actually not opposed to each other. When people are happier, they work better, they're more productive, and they stay longer, they quit less often. So happiness and fulfillment really are contributors to performance, not just results from performance.
So without trying to pin you down, but sort of to pin you down. No, I'm just curious. So can you just describe some of those different leverage points, Joel? You've kind of implied a number of them, but I think that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. Let's talk about meetings. Most people, when they think of work meetings, Don't get excited. They, you know, I saw a demotivational poster. Do you remember those motivational posters used to be on the wall in school?
Yep.
And then there was a meme for a while of demotivational ones, and they said meetings because none of us are as dumb as all of us.
Yep.
And in many cases, it feels like that. It feels like that was a waste of time. I didn't need to be there. That, that could have been an email. So what happens at meetings? Well, ideally, ideas are shared.
Mm-hmm.
If ideas are only being shared in one direction, that probably should be an email.
Yeah.
You can just tell people those things, and we don't need to gather people for that. Why would we gather people? Because we want to bring out differences in perspectives. I know you talk about psychological safety. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
There are good facilitation techniques where even just something as simple as using like a talking piece and sending it around the circle, or absent that, the whoever's chairing, facilitating the meeting, whatever, can just call on individuals, can notice who hasn't said something yet. If David hasn't spoken up, David, what do you think about this? I'm interested. What are your thoughts? Some people just need a specific invitation to share their thoughts.
I used a talking toupee that I passed around. Didn't go over really well. It's one of those ideas. Okay, let that one go. So,
but it's a good story, and change it for a talking, I don't know, juggling ball or something like that. Yeah, okay, talking teddy bear.
So meeting is a huge one. I'm sure that would capture all, because so many people have had an experience of that. Okay,
yes,
I'm just going to write these down so I don't forget them. So meetings is one leverage. One
nice. Okay. Yes, and within that, we could double click a little bit more and say, what does the start of your meeting look like? Mm-hmm. The first, I call it the first 5 minutes. How do the first 5 minutes set the tone for the meeting? Now, some people think, oh gosh, we got to get right into this. Most of us have been on a Zoom meeting or whatever, where somebody, every screen is black, and then somebody pops up on their, the camera turns on and say, okay, folks, I know everyone's busy and nobody wants to be here anyways. Let's get right into the agenda. Steve, what did you say? Whatever. And it feels jarring and inhuman. And no offense to anybody who's done this, because they're just trying to be efficient.
Yeah.
But it makes it feel awkward and not fun for people.
I'm a big fan of connection before content, even when I've been online facilitating a meeting with 200 people. Start with the conversation.
Yes. It can be so small. And, okay, if there's 200 people, not everyone is going to have a chance to share something, but we can be humans with each other first. And our little team, we had a thing at one point. It was kind of fun. We're talking about, it was a cold day and everyone's working from home. And somebody said, oh, I've got my cup of tea to keep my hands warm. And somebody said, oh, I don't like tea. I just pour a cup of hot water and I don't even drink it. I just use it as a hand warmer. Somebody said, oh, I've got a heater under my desk. And one person pulled up, here's my electric blanket. Right off camera. It was like, oh, an electric blanket. We had a 5-minute conversation about everybody's warming devices. And I had ordered a new electric blanket before we started the meeting. It was funny, these little moments that humanize people and that make us say, I like my colleagues, or the times we say, hey, I heard your sister was in the hospital. How is she? Those little moments where we have human connections, especially important online meetings. People do it more naturally in person when you kind of walk into the room. Another leverage point, move on, is sort of this, is the in-between times so a lot of life happens between the scheduled things. And we say, oh, okay, we've got a meeting at this time and a meeting at that time, but there was something in between it. And even if that something was nothing, it was unscheduled time. A lot of times, we go to a convention, people say, what was the best part? Oh, the hallway conversations.
Right.
I had this random conversation in the hallway. I got so much value just from talking to this one person. So we can pay attention to those. I talked with a CEO at some point. He said, I always will offer, if I'm interviewing somebody, I'll always offer them a coffee or a tea before we sit down to have the interview. And even if they don't want one, I'll take them to go get one, because I'll want one, because I want to see what's the conversation like as we're walking down the hallway, as we're waiting for the kettle to boil? I want to know, what does this person, how does this person show up when they think they're not being interviewed?
Mhm.
Often somebody sits across the table from us in the formal meeting time, and all of a sudden everything changes, and they're putting on a show at that point.
Right.
The in-between times are super powerful for building culture and connections with people, and we can use those intentionally. It's tougher online, but it's still possible. You just have to facilitate it a little more carefully.
Well, and also sensing what we talked about earlier about you get a sense of person's values in those in between times.
Yes,
Right.
yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Uh,
that's two.
okay, let's talk about recognition.
Okay.
Uh, So the short story here is that it's the frequency of recognition that matters, not necessarily the magnitude of the recognition.
Mm.
So people want to be noticed, they want to be seen, they want to feel recognized for their contributions to the team. And there was a study done, in 2023, I think, where they said, rate how strongly you agree with this statement. I've received something like, I've received praise or recognition for my work within the past 7 days.
Mm.
And 25% strongly agree with that phrase. Now, that seemed dismally low to me.
Mhm.
Like only 25, 1 in 4 people have been told. It wasn't like I've been applauded, I got a standing ovation, nothing like that. It's just like I've been praised or recognized for my work within the last 7 days. And they said, gosh, 25%, 1 in 4. And I was like, that's awful. And then I looked at my own team and okay, gosh, well, I didn't even talk to this person this week. And I started going through my core team. I was like, oh, well, I might be a little better than the 1 in 4, but I don't, I'm certainly not at 4 in 4. And then I looked at my extended team, and there were people I hadn't talked with for months, part timers or contract staff that are still important to our training team. And I was probably right on the 1 in 4 thing. I thought, oh gosh, that's tricky. So I started creating little cues to tell myself, oh, how am I going to recognize these people more often? And there's different things you can do annually or just even weekly, whatever, when you meet. But recognition times are really important. How do you recognize people?
So my sense, I mean, I have a couple of thoughts on this, and one of them is as well how much effort is put in the recognition. And a number of years
Mm,
ago, when I was still working in Toronto, we were working with a high tech firm, and in talking to some of the participants in the meeting, they were saying that so my manager just fires off this email, and to them, that was virtually meaningless. They had the technology to do it. They said one handwritten note because of the perceived effort that went into the
yes,
recognition, much more so than the content. And I think even the word
yes,
recognition, it's just kind of saying like, I recognize you. And so many people say, well, they're just doing their job. But it's about acknowledge them as a person that has
yes,
value, that can be,
yes.
attached to or detached from the actual work that they're doing.
Yes. You'll hear some people say things like, "Oh, these people are so needy." And it's like, well, okay, but we're all humans,
Mhm.
and we all probably have a little more of our self-worth vested in our professional
Mhm.
achievements maybe than we ought to in an ideal, psychologically healthy state. But like we're humans, we want to be seen and recognized and valued for who we are and what we contribute to the world. And you're absolutely right that it's such a shame when people say, "Oh, they're just doing their job." So tell them you did a fantastic job. Yeah, gosh, isn't it nice to not have to worry about the work that you're doing? Thank you.
And
You know,
I mean, it doesn't matter to me at all. But just before I go on, how do you like how I'm doing as a podcaster so far, Joel?
Oh, I think you're just knocking it out of the park here, David. This is a great conversation. Yeah. In fact, I'll be more specific. I really like how you're actually listening to the answers and like finding the next thing from there. Like some people you talk with, and it feels like they've got their list of questions, and it doesn't much matter how you respond. And that doesn't sound like this. And your skill as a facilitator is shining through. So thank you.
Well,
I'm loving this conversation.
okay, I'm ready to go on then.
Oh, good, good.
So we've got meetings. And it's, in particular, the start is one, deeper dive into that. The in-between times, what you do,
Yes,
all those
yes,
relating, connecting, all that kind of stuff. The recognition, and as you said,
yes,
frequency, not magnitude.
yes.
So that's 3. I'm letting this conversation go on a little bit longer because I think it's the norm, because I think it's really good value, and I'll make sure we get all of it in. So
Oh, great,
if you're okay,
great.
if you have time,
Yeah, I've got more. This is super. So, you know what? I'll add a leverage point. It's sort of like recognition. One thing from the book, habit 4. This is the bad habit. Remember, is credit stealing and finger pointing. And this seems so basic, but so many people have stories about some boss who, like a big cartoon villain, when things go well, they just say, "Oh, I'm the smartest villain in the world," and then they send out their, henchmen to go do their dirty work, the sidekick
Mhm.
crony, and if things go well, does that crony sidekick get any glory? No, the person just pumps himself up more. But if it goes badly, and as it usually does, at least in the kids' cartoons, the crony sidekick comes back, and the villain goes, "You imbecile! How could you be so stupid to mess this up?" There, you can't have it both ways. If you're taking the responsibility, you also get to take the blame,
Right.
and you can go. I mean, obviously, in cartoons, these are so. It's so obvious that 6-year-olds know who the real imbecile is. It, it, but somehow this sticks with us, and I think just because we're all insecure, maybe in some way, bad bosses are often good people. They just, oh, things went well. I want to look good. God, I'm proud of myself for this. It's perfectly okay to be proud of yourself, but share the credit. Share the credit when things go well. Recognize everyone for their contributions. And then the next point, the next kind of moment of truth is when things don't go well. And the bad bosses tend to point the finger, and say, "Oh, you did that, and you did this. This is your fault." And the blame game, as cathartic as it might be in the moment for us, is problematic because, number one, it doesn't solve the problem. So you're not making any progress by doing this. Number two, probably more importantly, it just ruins relationships. People already know that they messed up most of the time. Now, when you have to have feedback conversations because somebody genuinely doesn't know what happened, that's still a time to be careful about pointing the finger. You probably want to be much more conversational about that. But the leverage point is the moment of truth. When things didn't go well. I talked with a colleague, friend, longtime friend who has a company, and he says, "I'm prepared. I've got this set of 3 times in my mind where I've got kind of like the speeches pre-prepped, and one of the times is when one of my employees makes a mistake that costs a lot of money." Like, I've pre-thought about this because I don't want to say something dumb in the moment that ends up ruining the relationship. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time until somebody makes a mistake that's very costly, and I want to have thought about how do I want to handle that. You probably had a bunch of those like high stakes moments, that you've seen or heard about or been part of before.
So again, this brings a bunch of stories to mind, Joel, and one of them is a manager that I really liked. If he had one of his people do a presentation, they had to present at the senior management table, he'd bring his person in to do it, and give them the spotlight on that, and support
Yes.
them, right?
Yes.
And a lot of these things, and the same sort of thing about the finger pointing and all that. The optics of that, the ripples that go out are phenomenal. So not only does it impact that one person, but everyone else that sees it. And all of a sudden,
Yes.
everyone wants to make sure they're not the tall poppy and stays down, below the level. And I think about it in terms of the
Yes.
clients that I like to work with. And I really like to work with my clients where I feel like a partner as opposed to supplier or vendor. And what that
Yes.
means if we try something new that's not been done before and it works, shared success. If it doesn't work, shared learning opportunity. But it's that sharing of it, we're all in this together, that sends strong signals in the organizations. And people,
100%.
they'll tell the stories way more frequently about what happened when someone screwed up. Like, oh,
Yes.
whatever happened to Joel? Has anyone seen Joel lately?
Yes.
Right. And then the rumors on the downside spread much faster than the ones on when a manager did something well, because everyone's thinking that's exactly what he or she should have done. Right.
Yes. Yes. 100%. The culture is really just the set of stories that get told about an organization. It's the values, the stories that it's like, what do people say about this?
Yep.
And knowing that stories are a tool to build the culture you want. How do you celebrate people? What types of things get celebrated? Name a few other habits from the book. What do you do when you have a high performer? You mentioned, the tall poppies, and this like poppy chopping thing. The one philosophy is like, oh, if you've got a tall performer, you better cut them down. This expression has a bunch of geographic differences. Like sometimes a little more violent, like the tall or the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. Um, habit habit two is mediocrity mongering, and mediocrity mongering. If you create a culture of mediocrity, your high performers will not want to stick around. High performers want to fly. They want to, they want to go fast. I had somebody tell me that their boss said like, "Whoa, whoa, slow down! Like you're making the rest of us look bad
Oh
here."
gosh.
And she's like, "I don't want to work for that person. This is, so she's planning her exit at that point. Um, but managers have an interesting task because they're probably trying to protect the egos of everybody else so that the lower performers don't feel so intimidated or something. But it can be really problematic. And bosses have to have a philosophy about, okay, what type of culture do we want? Do we celebrate high performers, or do we ridicule them?
Well, of
Um,
course, part of the challenge with that is having a really good line of sight on what they're doing, because some people are very good at managing up and selling their bosses and how great they are, and so
yes.
if the only line of sight is have to those people and you don't get another sense, it's tough. And I was thinking that in terms of treating people, like I like the notion of mediocrity monger, because some organizations virtually have cultures that reinforce minimal acceptable standards. So
Yes.
as long as you stay above that line, you're okay. As soon as you go
Yes.
down, you get heard from. And some people actually would dip down there just so someone to pay attention to them. But
Mm,
the other concept that occurred to me is that, especially with high performers and performers of different sorts, I think this is my own hope, that people are more concerned about uh, that something is fair as opposed to equal. So if you're getting more
mm,
accolades, because I see you're doing a whole lot more work and I'm not getting as much, that to me is fair. I'm not getting the same as you, but I understand that if I
yes.
wanted to work up to that standard, I could do that too. But that fairness, and we have these little crap detectors on that are kind of looking for
Yes.
things that are inconsistent, and you only have to be inconsistent 1% of the time. And you're not described as 99% consistent. You're 1% inconsistent. And
Yes.
that's what people
Yes.
latch onto.
Yes. It's really hard. I mean, to bring it back to the fulfillment thing, a good strategy here is to recognize the unique contributions of
Yeah.
each person rather than trying to judge everybody by the exact same metrics or scale. Just honor the individuality of the people on your team, and they'll feel more seen and recognized for that, and they won't feel as directly compared to a high performer, whatever that is. Often people, yes, if we go to a sports analogy, yes, teams need star players, right? But star players don't win championships without teams. Everybody has roles to play on those teams, and you can honor each of those roles.
Yeah, lately I've been watching a lot, distracting myself, I admit it. But Caitlin Clark, the
Oh yeah.
star basketball player with Indiana Fever, and how everyone rises up. Like you can't do it on your own. Some really good examples there.
Yes,
So,
yes, for sure.
So, Joel, I'm going to give you an opportunity for one more thing. And by the way, I want to make sure that we get the name of your book in
Sure.
the program notes so that people can get that in your website and all those other good things. Because I'm sure there's gonna be people that say, "Oh, I wish this had gone on longer. I want to learn more." But
Oh,
if you had one more, what's one big sort of, oh, this one, it seems so minor, but it's so important and people can do something about it if only they're aware of it and are willing to do it. Any That's a lot of pressure on you, Joel, but you seem to be
yeah.
handling this well so far.
Oh gosh. So maybe I'll go big picture, which is if 80% of people are accidental bosses,
Hmm.
um, my mistake early on was that I didn't actually realize that I was the boss.
Hmm.
I hired an assistant because I needed help. Founders tend to do this. You know,
Hmm.
it's not that they want to lead people. They just want to do a thing and then they need people to help get it done. Right. And technical experts, they're good at what they do. And then sometimes they end up in a position where they say, okay, well, you're leading the team now because you seem to know what you're doing. I talked with an investment banker the other day, and he said it's very sports analogous. Like, it's like, the team managers are like the team captains. They are often the top producers, and they sometimes, he said, it's not that they wanted to be the manager. They just didn't want somebody else to be the manager. They didn't want to be managed by anybody else on the team. And so they miss that, like, oh, their job is no longer just producing.
Right.
The job now is to pay attention to get the most out of the team. And this is the training I think that is needed. It's like, oh, it's a mindset shift,
Right.
first and foremost. Um, you just pay attention. It's not just about the process or the task anymore. It's also about the people on the team. And if your job is to get the most out of the team, we can stick with the sports analogy. A coach is not going to lace up his skates at between periods and get onto the ice. The coach has to figure out, what can I do to help empower my players, to help make my team better, not just today but in the long run. And that is a lot of listening, a lot of observation, finding a few key principles, finding what makes that team work together. But it's a lot of observation and a lot less like, I need to do the work myself. The basketball coach is not going out to take the free throws. That's it's they got to figure out how to make that happen. So that's what I would say is it's really a journey. And this was my journey. I was 3 years in to leading a team before I had the realization that somebody just came to me with a problem, not as my assistant, but because I was their employer. And it's like, oh, that's my role. So it's a journey from accidental leadership to intentional leadership. And that journey is continuous, is the good news. I'm still on it, obviously, and learning more every day. But it's a journey worth working for, because the impact of bosses and culture in general is so powerful. It's a way to make people's work better, to get better results, but also to make people's lives better. And it's I think that's a journey worth pursuing.
Well, yes, sir. I mean, your energy, it's obvious that you're fired up about this and very committed to it, Joel. So just before we go, could you please repeat the name of your book again? And it will be in the program
Absolutely.
notes, but it is, okay, now listen closely, folks.
Absolutely. The 6.5 Habits of Highly Defective Bosses. Serious Lessons for Accidental Managers. And
So,
you can get that anywhere books are sold, Amazon and all the places. If you want to try the free assessment, the Highly Defective Boss Assessment, you can do that at my website, joelhilchey.com/bosses. And you can learn more about me there. Would love to keep in touch.
So here's the thing. So first of all, thank you very much for being here, Joel. And I want to just toss out a challenge to my listeners. I've never done this before, but what I'd like you to do, this is kind of an encouragement to continue to subscribe to my podcast. But after you've read Joel's book, I want you to send a note to me to what you think the half habit is.
Oh,
What is
that's a
the
good one.
half? Go looking for the half. So that's my challenge to you. So again, it's been David Gouthro, Discover Fresh Perspectives with my guest today, Joel Hilchey. What I can guarantee is that next week we'll have someone else from different perspectives. So thank you so much for being here today. Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.